talk about the importance of mind and body balance and how important supportive human connections are.
Yes, thank you, Asta. I'm going to be brief. So, I believe that good health begins in your head. When we think about health, diet and exercise are typically the first things we think of. However, good health isn't about physical body. Our mind and our body are interconnected, and it's really important to nurture the whole self. I'm a mother of three, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I know for all the women out there, and again, this is for men and for women, but as a woman, I can talk about the challenges that I go through, because now home is work, work is home is also school. So the best thing that one can do is take care of one's mental health and your emotional well-being, because it's really not about what you're eating or your exercise regime alone. It's about what you're thinking. It's about how you're feeling and how you're treating yourself and others. So for everyone out there, it's very, very important to make self-care a priority. Let's take care of ourselves first, our physical and our emotional needs. And it's very simple. All that I practice is I just keep checking in with myself and I ask myself, how am I doing? How's my heart feeling? Am I smiling today? How's my body feeling? Do I need a break? And if my answer is yes, I'm very unapologetic and I just tell everybody, I'm having mental fatigue, I'm feeling exhausted, I need a break. And I'm grateful to my family for their love and their support, because they get it. Because as mental health professionals, we are feeling the heat as much, maybe more, because we are trying to give energy to others. Yeah. But if our tank is empty, we cannot fuel anybody else's. So yes, let's prioritize that. And the most important thing about human connections, supportive human connections, is that as humans, our relationships with others form everything about us. And survival. And COVID has kind of taught us that we were not hardwired to be alone. We were hardwired to stay connected, to feel the love. In fact, our relationships are connected to our strongest emotions. When we feel positive and happy about our relationships, we feel overall happy and positive and calm. But when our relationships bring out the worst in us, when they're non-existent, we feel anxious, we feel depressed, we feel lonely. And that's why our healthy relationships can make us all feel healthier overall in life. So we at House of Empathy are giving everyone this opportunity to connect with one another, so that anybody who's going through any problem can support one another, create a bond, and contribute to our overall happiness, health, and well-being.
So my question to you is that what would you like to tell the young people out there who are working under pressure in stressful environments about chasing excellence? How can they maintain their mental health stance?
Well, good morning, everybody. I think it is a tough question because pressure is always going to be there, and pressure brings in its own things, such as self-doubt, for example. I was involved in sport for 20 odd years, and pressure was part and parcel of what I did. I was never able to get rid of it. It's a matter of learning to coexist with it, like we are trying to coexist with COVID at the moment. So pressure is always going to be there. So I think the first most important thing to do is accept it. And really learn to accept that, yes, there are going to be moments which are going to be tough. There are going to be moments which are going to push you out of your own comfort zone. And that's okay. I think as human beings, our nature is to resist things when they are uncomfortable. And that is what exactly we do with pressure. But the moment we learn to accept it and just learn to coexist with it, things do become a little bit simpler, and you start to focus on what you're supposed to be focusing on. I think pressure also brings in self-doubt. It certainly did for me. I was in the sport of shooting, as you know. It is a lonely pursuit. It is a lonely sport, but for 20 years of my life, my constant companion was self-doubt. I was never able to get rid of it, and I was never able to gain confidence, as many psychologists try to instill that in me. So instead of really chasing self-confidence and getting rid of self-doubt, what I actually started to chase was self-respect. I started to chase self-respect by making the journey the reward, and really getting detached from outcomes, really investing um, in the journey by following it with a lot of honesty, with following it with a lot of integrity. And I wanted to be the best version of my own self. And that to me was the most important thing. You chase self-respect by being answerable to nobody but yourself. I think you have to have the courage to look yourself in the mirror every night and ask yourself the difficult question that have you done your best in whatever you're trying to achieve, whether it be on the field of play in sport or whether it be in business or whatever you're trying to chase. Have you given it your all? Have you brought your A game to the fore? And if the answer is yes, and you've chased your dreams, chased your goals with integrity, hard work, and honesty, you will have a good night's sleep. And hard work ends up being the best sedative that you can ever get. So that is what I would definitely advise young people to do. I would also like to advise young people not to believe in the equation that success or a gold medal equals happiness. I think you have to try and reverse that equation and chase your goals by reversing that equation, and that is that happiness equals to success. I made that mistake for a long period of time where I thought a gold medal would bring me happiness. It certainly did not. And then, to be successful in my chosen field, I reversed the equation, and my results were much better. Finally, I would like to tell people that I think it is important to invest in relationships. I think that is the most important thing. You will all be very successful in whatever you may do, and may you all have a lot of success. But at the end of the day, when you do succeed, and when you look back at your careers, what will really be meaningful is the relationships that you build. Really try and invest in them. And what you will learn is that, the relationships that tease you, that make you a little bit uncomfortable, will end up being the most valuable ones that you build. So all in all, that is what I'd like to say in my remarks. This is what I learned being in sport. Sport was my greatest teacher in life, and that is how I live my life. So good luck to everybody. Pressure will always be there. You just have to learn to coexist with it.
Yes, very, very important points there, Mr. Bindra. And I think one of the things that you said in the beginning was that, accepting that pressure is going to be there. There is a lot of research in psychology which says that if we accept and if we recognize and report the emotion or the feeling that we're feeling, the impact of that feeling goes down in our brain. So recognizing and accepting that yes, I am stressed, or yes, there is pressure, will automatically reduce the impact of the stress or the pressure on our on our brain. And I think two things that really struck with me were that the equation for happiness is not does not always lie in in achieving a particular stance in success, whereas also investing in relationships is what will take life forward. So thank you very much. Those were very, very valuable inputs, and I'm sure a lot of young people out there, and even not so young people out there, will get a lot of inspiration from what you said. Thank you very much.
Monica ma'am, my question to you. The pandemic has been super stressful for one and for all. But the teachers and children have particularly been hit very, very hard. What changes are you seeing in the children? Do you have any suggestions for parents and children to adapt to this new normal?
A very good morning to everybody. Well, there's nothing normal about this situation. We keep calling it the new normal, but it isn't normal at all. And I agree with Abhinav. I think as a society, we have been telling our children that when you achieve that goal, you will be happy. I think we need to turn it around on its head. We need to tell them that you cannot control many things which will happen suddenly. Change is the only constant. So we need to make our children a little more combative, a little more resilient by teaching them gratitude. I think we keep telling children from the nursery upwards and the parents, gratitude is important. If as a family we all keep a gratitude jar, we'll be able to see what are the blessings that we have in spite of the changes which happen, in spite of any stressors that we come across, any triggers that we come across. And we need to teach our children that we always have a choice. We cannot let any situation govern our reactions. We need to be very cognizant of that. And children who come from, like Abhinav said before me, when they have solid relationships in the family, with friends, in extended family, those children are able to handle these kind of triggers very well. And so our strength would be in raising children to be adaptive to change, which can come from gratitude, definitely. And yes, we've seen a lot of changes in children. You would see a lot of meltdowns, you would see a lot of irritability, and we ourselves feel the same. And it's important to talk about it. It's important to have those conversations, because we cannot sweep it under the carpet. The pandemic and the lockdown is here, and we are coping as best as we can. If the children see the adults around them handling this kind of change with a lot of agitation, irritability, and negativity, they grow up to think that that is the way conflict resolution happens. But if they see the adults around them handling it with equanimity, that fine, I mean, I'm really feeling low today, and it's okay to feel low, but we are here to talk about it. It's okay to, sometimes have a meltdown. We can't say, oh, that's not the appropriate behavior. How can you be like this? I think when we expect our children to perform to an ideal kind of an image or a model that we have of our children, that gives them more stress. If we allow them to be and give them space to have, clear conversations with the adults around them and role model that, okay, sometimes I do feel low, sometimes I don't feel low. And I mean, it's okay, it's a part and parcel of the game. And if it's not now, I think this is a good opportunity to teach children this. In fact, there was a study made on the children who went through the 2009 global recession. Children whose parents lost jobs, whose parents were not doing well, the businesses didn't do well. When you track those children, it's seen that those children actually built a lot of resilience in them. They were used to it. They got used to things not going in a particular way. Yes, it was shocking, but families who handled it really well, their children were very successful. They found reserves of strength and resilience and combativeness. So it's really important to have the family connected. My teachers are connecting with children and parents much more than they do in a physical school. So every month there have been check-ins with parents, with children. The counselors have been kept really, really busy. We've got 4 counselors at the Signada school. And there is a whole team of special educators and teachers who are connecting. If they feel a child is not himself or herself in class, they will seek the child out and have conversations, call in parents if needed, or just give a shoulder to cry on, just talk to the child, just connect with them. And a lot more are going to the counselor or the class teachers. And I think all in all, as a community, Jyotika, I would want you to come in on that as a parent. As a community, I think all of us have become closer because of that. It's a situation we cannot handle, yes, but we can handle our reaction to it.
Right.
As a community, we definitely have come closer, the parents, the teachers, and the students. That's all I have to say.
Very, very true, ma'am. And thank you so much for the words that you said. Monica ma'am is the principal of Shiv Nadar School, and we are very, very proud that our children go to her school because she's a glorious example of a happy community, a caring community. And ma'am, my 2 takeaways. One, when you talk about the gratitude jar, we all really undervalue and underestimate the value of gratitude, not realizing that gratitude actually rewires our brain. It actually helps us become happier. And our community at Shivnadar School is practicing that. You are practicing it, ma'am, as a leader, and rightfully said that we are the role models to our children. A lot of parents in our practice ask us, but how do we teach our children gratitude? It's very easy. If we practice it as parents, children will follow suit. So it all starts with us parents, because parenting is about the parents. Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful words, and thank you for being a beacon of light and love for all of us.
So my question to you is, what are your suggestions, to help extend the mental health support to those who may not be able to afford, a mental health service?
Thank all of you to be here. It's a very esteemed panel. The part I come from, which is Orissa, the part of the world which I come from, I personally would feel that 95% people can't differentiate between a psychiatrist and a psychologist. This is the basic difference. 95% people don't have access to the kind of things which most of the panels out here have. Like, we have 30 districts in Orissa, and out of those 30 districts, only one district headquarter has got a psychiatrist there. And the gentleman passed somewhere in 1987 or 86. And ever since, there has been no upgradation of the gentleman's knowledge or his access to bettering the you know to better technology or to better understanding of the subject. So people in my part of the world, this is very alien to them. One just talks about mental health day, and on social media, past few years, we've been doing it on our newspapers or our channels. We've been having few discussions, but in reality, where it needs to percolate down to people, that is where it is not reached right now. I would still feel that mental health right now is considered more of a rich man's or a rich person's uh, domain. In that space, it really does not percolate down to where it actually needs to. Now, past so many years, we've been trying to create a help center. We started off with a helpline in Orissa. We got very few phone calls because people uh, are either shy to call up. It could be a small thing. We started off with student helplines in IITs and in regular colleges and in schools for suicide helpline. But we found very few people calling in because they were very shy. One, they didn't want to give out their identity. Second, they did not understand what would happen. First of all, most of those people really don't know whether they need mental health support or not. Most of them, even I personally wouldn't know, or many of our panelists wouldn't know, unless and until you get an access to an expert or somebody who has knowledge about it. Now, that access is a major problem in a place like Orissa, and I'm sure in many parts of this country. This country is not based out of cities and out of metros. It's based out of villages. Most of our people live in villages, and getting access to even information or for them to know what they need is also very difficult for them to know, to for them to even get it. So we started off with this helpline, and then we moved on to a Telegram helpline. Telegram is an app which people freely can download. So the identity can be kept. People can conceal their identity and they could call up. And what we would do is we would tie up with experts like Astaji or Saloni ji or other experts who are there with us in our panel. We would pass on that information and then connect them together and try to see how it can be solved. But if in case this access is given to each and every one, and if it's freely available, I think it would solve many problems in our country, uh, particularly in COVID times. Technology, everybody is is on webinars, and everybody is digital now. So bridging this thing digitally is also possible. It's very much possible, provided people in our country do have access to internet, because many places people don't have access to high speed internet or even basic internet also. So a lot of work needs to be done. We had given in a proposal to Dr. Harshvardhan, and he was quite keen. And fortunately, he's a doctor himself, so he understands the subject. And we tried to pan it down. But getting work done from the government is, I won't say it's difficult. It is difficult. Like, for example, our friend Abhinav has set up a fantastic sports center in a place like Bhubaneswar. It's a very nice place for athletes, for them to have access. But then most of our poor kids don't have access to that. I'm sure he himself also would want many people to have access to that. He also would want that to be replicated in smaller places. Like, I mean, possibly somebody like me, some kids coming to me, I could give a call to the secretary and get them access to this facility. But suppose this facility is given access to each and everyone, then the sports fraternity in this country would develop in phenomenal, in rocket completely. Similarly with mental health, uh, if access is given to more people, I won't say everybody does not need free access. There could be a small charge, there could be something. I mean, free access, if in case rice or food or rice can be given at 1 kg, 1 rupee a kg, why can't mental health access be given free? Of course, it's just one call center or one connecting point, and which will not cost much to the exchequer of this country or to the governments. It is very easy, provided somebody takes a lead and somebody you know uh, takes up this particular work and gets things together, and somebody in the position of power. That is most important. For example, uh, in the 80s, when we used to watch, in 70s or 80s, whenever there used to be a match between India and Bangladesh, a cricket match, which is a second religion in this country, uh, everybody used to switch off their televisions and say, Bangladesh kya karega, kuch khelte nahi hai, they don't know how to play. But suddenly in the 90s, they came up and it was phenomenal. So we had done a small study of how this happened in Bangladesh. The then governments in Bangladesh, all what they did in smaller places in Bangladesh, they created fields, just playing fields, not stadiums, not infrastructures, no buildings, nothing. They just planed out few fields and let kids play there, and there was no excess, no charge of playing in those fields. And gradually, when kids started playing, automatically the international standards improved. Similarly, if access is given, mental health access is given to everyone, whether to kids, to youngsters, to elderly people, whoever it is, if access is given, uh, I think we could do wonders in this country.
Thank you, Suparnaji. The theme, so every year the World Federation of Mental Health decides a theme for the Mental Health Day, and this year the theme is mental health for all, greater investment, greater access. And I think that is what you spoke about, because till now one of the biggest things that mental health communities were dealing with was the stigma that was around seeking mental health and even talking about it. And however, the pandemic leveled that for a lot of us, and there has been a shift and a change in how we approach mental health. We've understood the importance of it. The next step is now to invest in mental health at policy levels, at government levels, at individual levels, and recognize what is it that can be done to increase this access and increase this the approach to mental health. So thank you so much for sharing your valuable words. And
Shweta, in your article, which I loved. Down but not out. You've spoken about the impact of the pandemic. Why do you think there is an increased need for more conversations around mental health, not just for women, but for everyone?
Thank you, Jyotika. Thank you, Asta. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, because we started this, when you introduced me earlier, you spoke about my book, Why I Failed. When I wrote the book 7 years ago, Abhinav was one of the few people who agreed to talk to me on the importance of failure. I started out with a list of 20, 25 people that I wanted to feature in the book. And only about 16 agreed. And a lot of them, in fact, even told me that why are you choosing a topic like failure as your first book? So that was the stigma around difficult conversations. And I really enjoyed listening to Monica, ma'am. It's so heartening to know that schools are being so progressive, because when I went to school, failure was a taboo word. We were geared towards thinking that medals and winning competitions is the step towards recognition and happiness, right? So for me personally, I feel very happy that we are having a conversation like this. And I'm a parent of a 7-year-old. So the pandemic has played out very differently, and none of us expected this year to turn out the way it's turned out. 2020 began with big plans. In fact, even in the magazine, as the cover for our 2020, our first January issue, we had Narendra Modi looking through the binoculars, and a beautiful India and a very high-tech world is what he saw. And I was just going through that issue yesterday on what all of us expected and how things have just completely turned, right? So, but the one good thing that's come out of the pandemic is that it has helped us center ourselves a lot. And I think it has helped us reassess our priorities. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, I think a conversation like what we are having today, or a lot of other conversations that are happening around the need to take care of your mind, wouldn't have happened. So I think that's very, very crucial, right? And accessibility comes after you've given a language to what people experience. I personally am very, I write on economy, but I personally am very invested in this field, because I just feel that, as a nation, we tend to stay away from uncomfortable conversations, right? We don't want to talk about somebody who's going through an emotional or a mental health crisis. I mean, there is no language for it, right? So this is helping a lot of us recognize that, okay, if you feel a certain way, it's okay not to be okay, right? So coming to your question about the article I wrote and the fallout of COVID-19. Now, of course, the economy has taken a huge beating, and that's putting it mildly. We are experiencing a turbulent time. I mean, we've not witnessed a time like this since the Great Depression. From my generation, your generation, in fact, even Astha's generation, or Abhinav, or so many of the panelists here, we've never experienced a time like this, right? I know of so many people who've lost their jobs in the last few months. Salary cuts have become normal, right? So it is taking a toll on us emotionally, mentally. It's making us reevaluate our self-esteem. And the impact of this pandemic goes a lot beyond the economic impact of it. And we are seeing that, we are witnessing that. Suicide cases have gone up. I reported on a story where there was a young couple. The husband was working in an IT firm. He lost his job. The husband and the wife committed suicide, and the child was left behind. It was reported very widely. It happened in Ghaziabad. They had a little toddler. The toddler is being taken care of now by the grandparents. So these stories are not uncommon, right? And I think, when I say that the pandemic has helped us center ourselves, I think it has helped us evaluate what is really important for us. And I do hope that going forward, we will not chase success the way we have chased it. We will not question ourselves and doubt ourselves if we do not meet our benchmarks of success the way we did before February 2020, right? So I think the reset button is very, very important. I quite agreed and quite liked, in fact, with, when Abhinav, somebody like an Abhinav Bindra, who's, done the country proud, says this, because I think when somebody who's actually achieved it at the highest level says it, it just carries so much weight. I want to talk about, how this pandemic has weighed on men, of course, but more so on women, because we don't talk about that enough, right? Um, there are enough studies to show that COVID-19 and with COVID-19 and with so many women, especially women working from home, they are likely to lose out on their promotions. They are likely to get a setback in their career cycles by a few years. And there is a lot of concern and a lot of debate and conversation now, especially in the Western world, on how the pandemic is actually going to undo the progress that was made in the area of women empowerment by at least a decade, if not more. Because the fact is, the women are experiencing double burden, right? Earlier we would go to work, we would work in the office and come back, but now we are doing everything all the time. I'll give you my personal example. Thankfully I have help at home, but still I have been waking up at 4 in the morning to do my writing, because that requires a lot of concentration and it requires me to think, and I cannot do it when the whole house is, awake and just buzzing, right? And I have a 7-year-old who has to log on for his classes. I have other responsibilities, so I have actually cut down on my sleep tremendously, so that I'm able to at least keep up with my colleagues at work and at least do my bit, right? And this is me, and I come from a position of privilege. Now imagine so many women in tier 2, tier 3 cities, even metro cities, who are trying to manage things without family support, without ecosystems in place, but they have EMIs to pay. They contribute equally to, family income and household expenses. And so the impact is enormous. And what happens is, we've seen this with our mothers and grandmothers, that whenever they would go through a crisis, like I said, that there was no vocabulary for this, right? So you would the older generation would just say that, don't worry about it, you're just going through something, forget it, just move on, right? And I think it's so important that we talk about these issues, so that uh, women do not feel alone. If you feel very tired to get out of bed, if you feel that you're not motivated enough to do your 100% every day, that anyways is an impossible ask, but we set ourselves, up to such high standards that we keep questioning and doubting ourselves. We go through imposter syndrome all the time. We feel that, oh my god, I've reached this position, do I really deserve it? Before the world questions us, we question ourselves. And the pandemic has only made that worse, because what happens is that not only are you being a full-time parent, you're being a part-time teacher to your child, you're being a full-time professional, you're also being a full-time housekeeper. It's just tremendous. I mean, just spelling it out is exhausting, right? So this double burden is having an impact on women. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation. We need to have many more such conversations, so that women do not feel that, that there is something wrong with them if they feel the need to just take a few days off, if they feel too overwhelmed, if they feel that, oh, I don't want anyone around me, I just want to be left alone. Because we tend to doubt ourselves so much, and we tend to question ourselves so much. So uh, it's, I think, with the pandemic, with COVID-19, it has had its negatives, but I personally feel that it depends on perspective, on how you look at it. And I feel that the fact that we are actually pushing the narrative, pushing conversations where it's okay to speak about that, oh, I feel so low, I feel so depressed that I might want to, I mean, I have thought about, contemplated about ending my life, things like that. Like, I've had friends who've reached out to me and friends I've known for many, many years, and who've told me that, you know what, I have been suffering from depression, and this has just aggravated what I have been feeling. So as a media professional, I feel that we also need to tailor our content now to be able to meet this need for positivity and inspiration. What's happened is that, there's a certain format that big media has followed. In the last 2 to 3 decades, we feel that the nation is obsessed with politics and sports. All those things are very important, of course. But now I increasingly feel the need that the media needs to reinvent its role as well, and to be, to play a more positive and constructive role, to build conversations like this, to put out more inspiration and to put out more positivity. Because the fact is that the world is different now from what it was, and it's not going back to what it was, because that anyways was extremely, it was an extremely stressful state, right? That all of us were constantly running in this rat race, and suddenly nature has exploded and it's told us that, hey, come back in, rein yourself in, and reconsider where you're headed. And I feel that media needs to reassess their priorities in the kind of stories we put out, the kind of content we put out, and the kind of messaging we are giving out.
Thank you so much, Shweta, for that. Very, very, you actually speak for me and for so many women out there. We need to change the narrative. It's time that we all realize that COVID has really stirred the pot for all of us. And we need to talk about hope, happiness, gratitude, and well-being. And I love what you said. As a parent, we need to all learn to celebrate even our failures. I need to model that for our children, because they will follow our example.
It's so good to have you here, and you have the knack to connect with the youth, and you have been a great influence, especially for women over the last few years. Your brand has demonstrated passion, and you have managed to bring back the traditional craftsmanship of jutis with a contemporary twist, of course. Now, being from the world of creativity, fashion, how do you see mental health?
Thanks, Asta. It's so good to be here and to be a part of such an important discussion. While there are so many experts on mental health here on this forum, so I'm not going to touch on sort of how to handle that. But the entire time I was listening to everyone, Shweta, Abhinav, Sagar, ma'am, my entire thought process was, should I go experiential or not? I have never talked about my personal life before. It's always been regards to work and my workspace. But I've also never been a part of a mental health or mental well-being forum. So this is the first time. And I was thinking, should I not? But seeing 100 odd participants in this, and given the topic, I think it's very important for me to for the first time speak about it. So I'm going to go like a personal, a personal experience through this journey. So I just want to talk about, it's for women and children out there. So Asta, you might know, me and Asta also know each other personally, apart from this forum. So I lost my father at a very young age, extremely young age. Suddenly, a few years later, a couple of years later, I lost my real sister, who was only a year and a half younger than me, again at a very young age, and we were very close. Due to that stress, me and my brother developed chronic illnesses, which obviously had an impact on my mother, and which sort of like it just sort of like developed my personality the way it is, and developed us as a nuclear family. Me, my mother, and my brother, right? From 5 of us, we got down to 3 of us, with 2 of her children having chronic illnesses, and her herself dealing with mental meltdowns and breakdowns every so often, right? What I want to say is mental well-being is not just an end goal. It's a continuous learning process, which we don't realize. Everybody says, oh, X has happened, and this is like this major thing that's happened in my life, and now I need to work towards a mental well-being, I need to get stable. What you don't realize is that human life is so long and it's so complex that in every phase, in every step of your life, you're going to deal with an enormous setback. That might be smaller than the previous one, might be bigger, but every time you hit a setback, it's a setback. So the other day I was talking to somebody, and I was talking to a colleague of mine, and she was talking about her therapy, and that's the first. I have a lot of conversations with my colleagues at work. I just think, I'm just a chatty person, and I just talk to people and personal relationships form my personality. And as I mean, and I mean, consciously, I hire a lot of women. It's sort of like it just creates a nicer environment. It's just, you're emotionally more, you're available in terms of workspace and professionals for each other. And I've seen that massively in my workspace. So obviously, you become friends. And she said something to me which I thought was so incredible. She said, she was talking about her therapy session, and she said, Shireen, if our parents or the earlier generation received therapy, we'd be much more balanced. And she said, but because we have so much access to therapy and there's so much conversation around therapy and the fact that we're receiving therapy, I hope that the next generation is more balanced out and they understand the importance of mental wellness. So I'm just going to go back to what I was saying about my personal experience. So obviously, after having the certain setbacks, you sort of, nobody talks. We decided, me and my brother and my mom decided not to talk about it or not to cry in the open, so that it wouldn't hurt the other person, right? So we try to create this defense mechanism for ourselves and for each other. And what happened is, we started crying in sort of personal spaces. We didn't talk about it, but then it would come out in like big things. Like I would open the door and I would see my mom howling. I would just, we would get a dream, and my brother would say in passe, "Oh, I got a dream about, X," and I could see him almost melting, and suddenly he would snap out of it and he would walk out of the door. What happened is that three of us became so, we started developing these anxieties, right? The biggest and the most common anxiety, which I have realized 20 years later in the pandemic, is three of us have extreme high health anxieties. Like a friend of mine gets sick, if if my mom or my brother even like have a viral, even have a mild fever, the entire house, right? Because none of us ever received help. I wish when we hit the massive setbacks that we did, I wish someone said that, listen, the kids need to go in for counseling or a session of therapy just to understand how they're feeling, how to handle happiness and not happy, just handle grief and happiness. We also had extended families I remember this very, very clearly, when my sister passed away. I was just a few days, and obviously my mom was in a really, really bad condition. And my mom's brothers had come, and my cousins had come, and they were trying to cheer her up. So a joke was cracked, and she laughed, and I'll never forget this. And a friend or someone of my mom had come to sort of like be a part of the grief, and she opened the door. And my mom was laughing, because my uncle had just cracked a joke. And the minute my mom saw that lady, she went pale. And I know why she went pale. She went pale out of the judgment of her having that laugh for that moment, even though her child just passed away a few days ago. And even though that was a moment, but what was that other person going to think? Or why, or even self guilt of why did she have to laugh? Why did she deserve it? And this stuck with, and I mean, now 20 years later, I still think about that one episode and so many more episodes that happened at that time. And nobody ever turned to my mother and said, listen, your kids need therapy, or you need to go in for therapy, just feel better. Just to understand that it's okay to be happy and it's okay not to be happy. But what we learned through this process was gratitude, like Sagar ma'am said. And I think that is a defense mechanism, and a lot of people don't learn it. But what happened is, a lot of my friends used to tell me, Shireen, we look at you, I mean, nobody can tell that you've gone through this. And I said, and I always say, I mean, but what choice do I have? Do I have the choice to permanently shut down, or do I have the choice to live on? And this my mother taught me over the time. She says, you have to live on. You get sucked, because we're living in India, we do get sucked into situations like astrologers and priests and things like that, right? So when you're going through so much and nobody talks about therapy, you cling on to any support that you can. And I remember my mother saying, don't do that. Don't get into that situation. She said, live on, be grateful. She says, X person, this happened to them, X person, that happened to them. You're still better off. You still have everything going for you. You still have your mom, you still have your brother, we have each other. And that gratitude sort of just helped me pull through. That shot, I was getting married, the most happiest time in my life. Of course, we were all very excited. And again, the same past starts to haunt you, right? Oh, I'm going to leave. Who's going to look after my mom? My brother's young. What about the health? The health suffers. Where am I going to be? Will they ever tell me? Oh, this happened, that happened. even in the good times, what happens is that your grief or your anxieties pull you down. And then obviously needle dust happened, and I've been so I think about these things very consciously. I don't shut it out, so I always think about, okay, these are my fears and these are my worries. Why do my fears come? Why do my worries come? And it's a continuing learning process. So obviously the pandemic happened. What the pandemic did to me as a professional and as an individual was, before the pandemic, in regards to needle dust, you're very competitive. I'm a very competitive person, and I compete with myself. I want to always do better, but what happens is it creates a lot of pressure on you. The fashion industry in itself is massive. There's a lot of competition. Not just competition would be a right way, but there's a lot of pressure of like excelling creatively, right? So when you're excelling something, and a lot of people say, oh, emotions and creativity is intertwined. They might be to a certain extent, but not throughout, not all the way. So when we're launching a collection, and then there are the time limits. Oh, I haven't collection yet or not. How will the collection be perceived? The numbers, then what the sales are like, what the sales are not like. Every single day I was working for 14 hours at least, given even weekends, and just understanding where my business is. What the pandemic did was, it hit a dead end, right? Nobody could do anything. We were all sitting at home. There were no laptops to open. Of course, we all did webinars, but they weren't. I mean, your webinars an hour a day or 2 hours a day, whereas I was working 14 hours a day. It gave me a lot of time to think. Just think, sit back. I went through a very, very a big emotional downer, as I say, and purely because I had so much time to think about myself individually. And I said, oh my, what if my business doesn't come back, or what if my work doesn't come back, or oh my God, I'm feeling like my health anxieties are getting back. Constantly thinking because of my brother's chronic illnesses, or my mom, oh my God, are they doing well? Are they feeling well? What if COVID gets to them? All of these things started surfacing all of a sudden again. The first thing I did is I thought about my colleagues. I rolled out an email saying, I know we're all going through things individually, whether it could be home or you're feeling something professionally. Please reach out so I can get you in touch with counselors if you may need. Please talk to one another. And if you find it difficult to talk to one another, talk to professionals, because it's really important. And I remember having this discussion also with Astha and telling her that we want to do this. And I did roll out. And I did honestly think there would be some takers, but there were none. There were absolutely none takers. But I didn't want to question them as to why. But I thought it was very important for me as a business owner to sort of do that for your, like, a community, within your office. What I also did was I reached out myself for a conversation, because I understood the importance 20 years later that I had not entirely dealt with my health anxieties. Which massively helped me. Now, why I say mental wellness is a continuous process and not an end goal. I obviously, got into conversations and counseling, and I felt like, oh, I'm feeling much, much better. My husband's like, oh, you're looking much better. Your conversations, you're looking lighter. And I really felt happy. In the middle of the pandemic, my mother, for the first time, got really sick and had to be in the hospital, and the doctors had also had sort of a conversation, and I had to go stay with her in the hospital. And I remember and I was so scared because she got sick pretty seriously. And I remember sending my cousin started messaging me and saying, "How are you doing? And how's your mom?" And this is after receiving help for my health anxieties. I sent a message to my cousin saying, "I wish I was never born. Like, I have to go through this every few years. Like, first, my dad, and then my sister, and then my brother, and then myself, and now my mom." And I said, I can't bear it anymore. And that's when I realized that even after taking help, your mind, you can't train your mind 100. It's a continuous process. You can't stop. You can't just think that, oh, I've received it and I'm feeling good, and nothing that ever happens will create a negative impact on me. And it did again. But what that made me realize is that the importance of mental wellness continuously. And now there's a lot of shift in the conversations that's happened at home because of the pandemic and at workspace, where we talk about competition, we talk about work pressures, deadlines, and and I hear myself, and sometimes some people can be like, oh, that's not what a boss should say. After we set deadlines, I said, guys, okay, kya ho jayega? 2 दिन late ho jayega, hafta late ho jayega. Don't worry, let's just put in our best, and we never go beyond work hours. We have an 8.5 hour work shift, and I try not to hit beyond it, because I always feel that you need to switch off from any sort of pressure and sort of resume, like hit reboot back to work, back to your own self, and we try to do that. And I think just making little adjustments in life, in workspaces, if there are any entrepreneurs here, just to try to have open conversations at work, even once a week, an hour away from just work related things. If you can just check on each other and just ask even your colleagues how they're doing, do they need any help, just to have just a heart to heart conversation. I think it goes a long way. At home, I said that in my quote when Reboot asked me, and I said mental wellness has a lot to do with your physiological physiological well-being. We hear things like revenge board, comfort food. All those things come from mental wellness. If you're not feeling mentally good, that your first comeback to it is, oh, I need a haircut, I'm going to feel good. Or you know what, I want to eat a tub of ice cream, I'm going to feel good. Or hey, you know what, I'm going to hit the gym and get a revenge board, so other people look at me and I'm looking great, and that's going to make me feel good. But those things are momentarily. Those things are not a permanent change. To create permanent changes, I think the dialogue of mental wellness and therapy and counseling needs to be stronger. We've come a long way, which I think is so incredible, but I think we still have a long way to go. Sorry, Asa.
Thank you so much, Shireen. Thank you for, first of all, sharing so much of your personal journey, and just humanizing our conversation today. You've just added that element of, reaching out to all our emotions, of humanizing this entire experience of what mental health is. And, some of the things that you said, little changes that we can, bring about at our workplaces can go a long way to just changing the environment. And I genuinely agree with you when you say that, when we reach out to one person, the one person that we reach out to has the ability to reach out to one more and then one more. And that's how the chain of empathy and compassion just spreads forward. So just thank you so much, Irene. We're getting a lot of messages from a lot of our attendees who are, thanking you for sharing your personal journey. And like I said, for humanizing this for us. Thank you very much.
How the lockdown, which is impacting all of us, we're all feeling swamped. How is it worse for people who have mental health issues?
Right. So I think you used the correct word, that yes, we are all feeling very swamped and, just struggling to deal with this lockdown now. So there's been, anyway, we are all, anxious, we are low. Sometimes we don't want to do anything, completely bored as well. And there are so many negative thoughts that we are feeling about the future. So, I mean, it kind of becomes difficult to imagine what a situation and a challenge, additional challenge it might be for a person who's already experiencing a mental illness. And where I kind of want to emphasize on that the vulnerability has sort of increased a little bit for them. And on top of that, access to mental health care has also become a challenge, because anyway, online or telecounseling is still a privilege that's not affordable for a lot of people. We're also talking of, across age groups, that, people who are going through, say, teenagers or youngsters who are dealing with abuse situations or impulsive behaviors at home. So their safety nets and resources are also kind of constrained at the moment. So I think all of these factors are kind of contributing to, an increased vulnerability towards mental health problems in general, as well as suicide, for that matter.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And how can we help a friend or a family member who may be battling with all of these negative thoughts? Please tell us the do's and the don'ts.
Okay. So I think the first couple of things that we need to sort of remember is that we need to be a slightly bit more attentive to what's going on in the emotional spaces of people around us. So for example, if a loved one is talking about feeling hopeless or alone, or if they're saying that they have no reason to go on living, it's sometimes they are just brushed off as statements that are said in a moment, but they can be a slightly bit more serious issue. They can point to that. Then again, I think if there are any unusual changes in behavior, so for example, if suddenly the sleep or appetite has changed, if there's an increase in impulsive and substance abuse behaviors, if they're being emotionally distant or avoidant, I think those are again some of the warning signs. But again, the other side to this is that not all of this or not each of these things is a precursor to suicide, and we all kind of deal with them maybe from time to time. So it's important to kind of also not push it, to kind of recognize, which factors we need to, sort of attend to, and which we can probably
Right.
talk
Sometimes
about
we get
with,
over
with
enthusiastic to just help
yeah
someone and we push the boundary too
yeah
much.
bombard with concern and care. So I think that also isn't something that we need
To find
to do.
that balance.
So also to find the balance, and just we need to kind of openly ask and try to listen to what they're trying to communicate. Don't be afraid of asking a question that are you feeling this way, or do you have thoughts related to self-harm, or your or to commit suicide. So it's important to talk about it and not get offended if they say yes. That's also again important, because
That's important.
it might not be a reflection on what you behave, but rather what the person is
They are feeling, right? So ask questions, and even if you're uncomfortable, but ask somebody
Ask
who you. Yeah, okay.
and know that mental health help is available, and
Right.
with treatment things can get better. So have that reassurance, and try to provide that reassurance to people that you love who might be going through a difficult time.
Thank you so much, Nidhi. This really reassures us that yes, mental health does not need to be a taboo anymore. There is help available. Reach out, seek help. We are here for you. And again, first step is awareness. So why we are making these videos is to spread awareness. As mental health professionals, we understand, but people around us don't understand. So this is our honest attempt to spread awareness so that you are more vigilant, you are more aware, and you can help people around you. So I'm going to ask Asta to briefly give us her opinion on the benefits of support groups for our community.
Jyotika, thank you so much for asking me this question. And I want to thank all our panelists today for throwing light on how they look at, wellness. We had, Mr. Abhinav Bindra talking about failure and how to manage and accept the pressures around us. We had Miss Monica Sagar ma'am, who spoke of how it has to begin, how empathy begins at a younger age, and what families and parents can do. We've had Suparnoji speak of the policy level, a setting of mental health and how it can be accessed. And I think one of the things that I see, increasing the access to and investing in mental health is, and making sure that mental health is for all, is to create support groups. Support groups is a fairly new concept in a country like ours. I mean, new in the sense, I'm talking with respect to mental health. A support group is essentially, an empathetic circle which allows us to connect with people who may be experiencing similar issues that I am. And one of the biggest benefits of a mental health support group is to know that I am not alone. There are others like me, and together we can, by just building a connect, by sharing our experiences, by talking, by listening, by lending support, by receiving support and receiving help, we can grow as individuals and we can grow as communities. Our intention with House of Empathy, and the reason why we invited people from not people who are not from the mental health space and background, is because we wanted mental health for all. We don't want, I've been asked multiple times that, is therapy only for the privileged, is therapy only for the educated, is therapy only for the professional? But no, therapy, counseling, mental health support, empathy and compassion is for everyone. It's a human need. And and we've spoken a lot today about how the pandemic has contributed to recognizing that human need. And one of the initiatives that we have, which is House of Empathy, is to to provide that access, and that's our investment in mental health. That is via support groups, via forming a community, which not only creates a support and a safe space, but also enhances conversation around compassion, around empathy, about sharing and talking, and giving and taking from one another, and building all of this together. So that's what my understanding of mental health for all is. And mental health is for all. And I often say this, and that we're all mental because we all have a mind, and our mind deserves that kind of investment. Our mind deserves our mind deserves to feel nurtured. As we nurture our bodies, it's important for us to nurture our mind as well. So that's my take on mental health for all, greater investment and greater access.